Number: The Fall of New Haven. Captain Sarah Chen watched the incoming transmission with growing dread as the holographic display flickered to life in the command center of the UES Vigilance. The message came from New Haven Colony, one of humanity's most prosperous settlements on the outer rim of known space. What she saw made her blood run cold. The colony's main city was burning. Massive alien warships hung in the sky like black daggers against the orange sunset, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. These were Zephyrian vessels, belonging to a species that had made contact with humanity only 3 years prior. The first meetings had been tense but diplomatic, with both sides agreeing to respect each other's territorial boundaries. "This is Governor Martinez of New Haven Colony," the desperate voice crackled through the static. "We are under attack by Zephyrian forces. They came without warning, without any communication. They're targeting civilian centers. Repeat, they are deliberately targeting civilians. We have 18,000 colonists here, including 5,000 children. Our defenses are failing. Please, if anyone receives this, tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Zephyrians broke the peace accords. Tell them." The transmission cut to static as a brilliant flash illuminated the screen. When the interference cleared, Captain Chen could see a massive crater where the colony's capital had stood just moments before. The Zephyrian ships were already departing, their mission apparently complete. "Captain," her communications officer said, his voice shaking, "I'm detecting no life signs from the surface. The entire colony is gone." Captain Chen stared at the devastation on her screen, feeling a rage building inside her that she had never experienced before. New Haven had been home to poets, teachers, farmers, engineers, and their families. People who had left Earth seeking a better life among the stars. Children who would never grow up, who would never see another sunrise. "Get me a quantum link to Earth Command immediately," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. "Priority. Alpha. This information needs to reach the Admiralty within the hour." 3 days later, the emergency session of the United Earth Council convened in the underground bunkers beneath Geneva. The massive holographic display showed the recorded footage from New Haven, playing the destruction over and over as delegates from every nation on Earth watched in stunned silence. Fleet Admiral Rebecca Thompson stood at the podium, her weathered face grim as she addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have confirmed that the Zephyrian Empire has committed what can only be described as an act of genocide against our people. 18,000 human beings were murdered in cold blood, including children as young as 3 years old. This was not a military target. This was a peaceful, agricultural colony." The Russian delegate leaned forward in his chair. "What do we know about their motivations? Was this some kind of misunderstanding?" Admiral Thompson shook her head. "Our intelligence suggests this was a deliberate test of human resolve. The Zephyrians wanted to see how we would respond to the complete destruction of one of our colonies. They've been monitoring our communications, studying our military capabilities, and they concluded that humanity was weak enough to accept this atrocity without retaliation." The Chinese representative spoke up. "What are our options? Their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than ours." "That's where they made their crucial mistake," Admiral Thompson replied, a cold smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "They studied our current military technology, but they failed to understand the true nature of human innovation when we're pushed to the brink." She gestured to the screen, which now displayed technical schematics that made several delegates gasp in recognition. "For the past 15 years, our scientists have been working on Project Helios, a theoretical weapon system that could destabilize a star's nuclear fusion process. It was considered too dangerous to ever deploy, too morally questionable to even test. But the Zephyrians have changed the calculus." The Brazilian delegate stood up, his face pale. "Admiral, are you suggesting we destroy their star system? That would mean killing potentially billions of innocent civilians." Admiral Thompson's expression hardened. "According to our intelligence, The Zephyrian Empire operates under a hive mind structure. Every member of their species was aware of the decision to attack New Haven. Every single one of them participated in that choice through their collective consciousness. There are no innocents among them, only participants and accessories to genocide. The debate that followed was fierce and emotional. Some delegates argued for proportional response, suggesting that humanity should target only military installations. Others demanded economic sanctions and diplomatic solutions. But as the hours wore on, the images of New Haven's destruction continued to play in the background, a constant reminder of what had been lost. Dr. Elizabeth Hawking, the brilliant astrophysicist who had originally conceived Project Helios, addressed the council via hologram from her laboratory on Luna Station. "The weapon is theoretically sound," she explained, her voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. "We can cause their primary star to go supernova by introducing specific exotic particles into its core. The process would take approximately 72 hours from initiation to complete stellar collapse. Any planets in the system would be vaporized instantly when the shock wave reaches them." "How certain are you that this will work?" asked the Indian delegate. 97% certainty, Dr. Hawking replied. "We've run the calculations thousands of times. The only variable is whether we can get our delivery system close enough to their star without being detected." Admiral Thompson nodded grimly. "Our stealth technology has advanced significantly since first contact. The UES Retribution has been fitted with the latest quantum cloaking systems. She can reach the Zephyrian home system undetected." The vote, when it finally came, was not unanimous. 57 nations voted in favor of Project Helios, while 23 voted against, and 12 abstained. It was enough to authorize the mission. As the council session ended, Admiral Thompson remained at the podium, watching the delegates file out in somber silence. She knew that history would judge this decision harshly, that future generations might view this moment as the day humanity lost its soul. But she also knew that sometimes survival required making choices that would haunt you forever. The preparation for Project Helios began immediately. The UES Retribution, humanity's most advanced stealth vessel, was equipped with the exotic particle payload that would serve as the trigger for stellar collapse. Captain Marcus Webb, a veteran of the Martian Independence War, was chosen to command the mission. "Captain," Admiral Thompson said, as she briefed him privately in her office, "I want you to understand the magnitude of what we're asking you to do. You will be responsible for ending an entire civilization. Billions of lives will be extinguished because of your actions." Captain Webb nodded solemnly. "I understand, Admiral. But those children on New Haven deserve to grow up. They deserve to have families of their own, to contribute to the galaxy. The Zephyrians took that away from them. Sometimes justice requires a terrible price." 2 weeks later, the UES Retribution departed from Earth's orbit, beginning its journey toward the Zephyrian home system. The trip would take 6 months, using the fastest FTL drives humanity possessed. 6 months for the crew to contemplate what they were about to do. 6 months to question whether revenge was worth becoming the very monsters they sought to punish. But as Captain Webb stared at the stars through the observation deck, he thought about Sarah Martinez, age 7, who had been learning to play the violin on New Haven. He thought about Dr. James Park, who had been developing new agricultural techniques that could have fed millions. He thought about all the dreams and aspirations that had been snuffed out in an instant by alien weapons. The Zephyrians had taught humanity a valuable lesson about the true nature of the universe. They had shown that sometimes peace was not possible, that some acts demanded the ultimate response. Now it was time for humanity to teach them a lesson in return. That when you push humans too far, when you cross certain lines, the consequences are absolute and final. The journey to the Zephyrian home system had begun, and with it, the countdown to an entire species extinction. Number, the approach. 6 months of travel through the void had changed the crew of the UES Retribution in ways that went beyond physical adaptation to life in space. Commander Marcus Webb could see it in their faces during daily briefings, the way conversations stopped when he entered a room, the careful distance his officers maintained when discussing the mission parameters. They were all haunted by the same question that plagued Webb's own sleepless nights. What kind of people were they becoming? The ship's quantum cloaking system hummed quietly through the corridors as they approached the edge of Zephyrian space. Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's xenobiologist, had spent months analyzing every scrap of intelligence they possessed about their target species. Her reports painted a picture of a civilization that was both fascinating and terrifying. "The Zephyrians are not like us, Captain," she explained during one of their final planning sessions. "Their hive mind structure means individual consciousness, as we understand it, simply doesn't exist. When they made the decision to destroy New Haven, it wasn't a government or military leadership making that choice. It was literally every single member of their species participating in a collective decision." Lieutenant Commander Torres, the ship's tactical officer, studied the holographic display showing the Zephyrian home system. "How many are we talking about, Doc? What's the population estimate?" Dr. Kim's voice was steady, but Webb could see the pain in her eyes. "Approximately 4.7 billion individuals across 3 planets and dozens of orbital installations. But you have to understand, from their perspective, they don't see themselves as individuals. They're more like cells in a vast organism. The concept of individual guilt or innocence is meaningless to them." "That doesn't make this easier," muttered Chief Engineer Patel from his position at the back of the briefing room. "We're still talking about billions of lives." "Reckon." Webb nodded grimly. "I know. We all know. But remember what happened to the families on New Haven. Remember that the Zephyrians saw our people as nothing more than test subjects to gauge human military response. They treated our children like lab rats." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. Ensign Foster's voice crackled through the comm system. "Captain, we're detecting a Zephyrian patrol fleet at the edge of sensor range. 3 vessels, moving on an intercept course with our projected route." Webb stood immediately. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Activate maximum stealth protocols." The next few hours tested every advancement in human technology. The quantum cloaking system bent space-time around the Retribution, making it virtually invisible to conventional sensors. But the Zephyrian ships were equipped with gravitational wave detectors that could potentially identify the subtle distortions caused by their passage. "Hold position," Webb ordered, as they watched the alien patrol fleet move past them at a distance of less than 50,000 kilometers. The enemy ships were elegant in their deadliness, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with an eerie blue light that seemed almost alive. "Captain," whispered Navigation Officer Chen, "I'm reading quantum resonance patterns from their hulls. It's like their ships are extensions of their hive mind network. They might be able to detect us through psychic connections rather than technological means." The implications sent a chill through the bridge crew. If the Zephyrians could sense their presence through some form of collective consciousness, then their entire mission might be compromised before it began. But the patrol fleet continued on its course, apparently unaware of the human vessel ghosting through their space. After 6 tense hours, the Zephyrian ships disappeared beyond sensor range, leaving the Retribution alone in the vast darkness between stars. "Resume course to the primary star," Webb ordered, though his hands were still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. "Time to target?" 18 hours, sir," replied Chen. "We'll reach optimal deployment range right on schedule." As they drew closer to their destination, the true scope of Zephyrian civilization became apparent. Their home system was a marvel of engineering that put humanity's greatest achievements to shame. Massive orbital platforms surrounded each planet, connected by bridges of crystalline material that stretched across millions of kilometers. The planets themselves had been partially terraformed, their surfaces covered with geometric cities that pulsed with the same blue light as their starships. "My God," breathed Dr. Kim as she studied the sensor readings. "This is beautiful. Look at how they've integrated their technology with the natural gravitational fields. Those orbital structures are using the planet's own rotation to generate power." Webb felt a stab of doubt pierce through his resolve. The civilization spread out before them represented thousands of years of development, countless generations of beings who had built something truly magnificent among the stars. In less than 24 hours, all of it would be nothing but expanding plasma and radiation. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Lopez, "I'm intercepting fragments of their hive mind communications. The translation matrix is having trouble with the collective consciousness aspects. But I'm picking up something interesting." "Act? What kind of something?" Webb asked. "They're discussing the New Haven attack, sir. From what I can understand, they're analyzing human response patterns. They seem to think the destruction of our colony was a successful test of human weakness. They're planning additional attacks on our outer settlements." The doubt in Webb's mind crystallized into cold determination. The Zephyrians weren't content with their single act of genocide. They were treating it as the opening move in a larger campaign to test human resolve through the systematic murder of civilians. Every moment they delayed meant more innocent lives at risk. "Continue monitoring their communications," Webb ordered. "I want to know if they detect our approach." The final approach to the primary star took 12 hours of careful navigation through the system's complex gravitational fields. The Zephyrians had built so many massive structures that space itself was warped in unpredictable ways, creating navigation hazards that would have destroyed a less sophisticated vessel. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the mission's stellar physicist, worked frantically at her console as they approached the deployment point. "Captain, the star's fusion patterns are even more stable than our models predicted. We'll need to place the exotic particle payload directly into the stellar core for maximum effectiveness." "How close do we need to get?" Webb asked. "Within 50,000 kilometers of the photosphere," Reeves replied. "Any further out, and the particles won't achieve sufficient density to trigger the cascade reaction." Lieutenant Commander Torres pulled up tactical displays showing the area around the star. "Sir, that puts us well within range of their solar collection arrays. Those installations are heavily defended." Webb studied the display, noting the positions of Zephyrian defensive platforms orbiting the star at various distances. Each platform was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could vaporize their ship instantly if detected. "Plot a course through the solar magnetic field lines," he ordered. "The charged particle streams should mask our quantum signature long enough to reach deployment range." The next few hours were the most dangerous of the entire mission. The Retribution navigated through fields of superheated plasma that would have instantly destroyed any unprotected vessel. Their ship's advanced shielding systems strained to cope with temperatures exceeding 10 million degrees Celsius. "Hull temperature approaching critical levels," reported Chief Patel. "We're losing efficiency in the quantum cloaking system. If we stay here much longer, they'll definitely spot us." "Almost there," Dr. Reeves called out from her station. "Deploying the payload. In 3, 2, 1. Payload away." The exotic particle package, contained within a specially designed quantum field matrix, drifted away from their ship toward the star's core. It would take approximately 6 hours for the particles to penetrate deep enough into the stellar mass to begin the chain reaction that would cause the star to collapse and then explode. "Package deployed successfully," Webb announced to his crew. "All stations, prepare for immediate departure. We need to be at least 2 light-years away before the detonation sequence begins." As the Retribution turned away from the Zephyrian star, Webb took one last look at the thriving civilization surrounding it. Billions of beings were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their sun had just been turned into a ticking time bomb. In 72 hours, everything they had ever built, everyone they had ever loved, would cease to exist. But then he remembered the children of New Haven, and his resolve hardened once more. The Zephyrians had made their choice when they decided to test human resolve through genocide. Now they would learn that some tests carry consequences beyond their imagination. The journey back to human space would take another 6 months. But long before they arrived home, the Zephyrian Empire would become nothing more than an expanding cloud of stellar debris, a monument to the price of crossing humanity's red lines. Number: The Reckoning. The observation deck of the UES Retribution had become Commander Webb's sanctuary during the 3-day countdown to stellar collapse. Through the reinforced transparent aluminum windows, he could see the stars wheeling slowly past as his ship maintained its position 2 light-years from the Zephyrian home system. Soon, one of those points of light would become the brightest object in this sector of the galaxy for a brief, terrible moment. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves joined him at the observation window, her tablet displaying the real-time stellar analysis data streaming from their long-range sensors. "The cascade reaction is proceeding exactly as predicted," she reported, though her voice carried no satisfaction. "The exotic particles have achieved critical density within the star's core. Nuclear fusion efficiency has already dropped by 30%. Webb nodded silently. There was nothing to say that hadn't been said already during the past 71 hours. Every member of the crew understood the magnitude of what they had set in motion. Soon, the balance sheet of genocide would be complete. "Captain," communications officer, Lopez called from his station. "I'm still intercepting fragments of Zephyrian communications. The collective consciousness seems to be changing." "Changing how?" Webb asked, moving away from the window. Lopez frowned at his displays. "It's difficult to translate, sir. But they're expressing concepts that don't match their previous communication patterns. Fear, maybe? Confusion? They seem to have detected that something is wrong with their star." Dr. Kim, who had been monitoring the alien communications alongside Lopez, looked up from her workstation. "Captain, I think they're starting to understand what's happening. The hive mind is trying to process the concept of species-wide extinction. It's like watching a vast intelligence slowly realize it's about to die." Webb felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Are they attempting to evacuate?" "No, sir," Kim replied. "That's the strange thing. Like they understand that this is the consequence of their actions." The hours that followed were among the longest in human history. The crew of the Retribution watched their instruments as the readings from the Zephyrian star became increasingly erratic. Fusion reactions flickered and surged as the exotic particles continued their deadly work, destabilizing the delicate nuclear processes that had kept the star burning for billions of years. 15 minutes to critical cascade failure, Dr. Reeves announced. "All hands should prepare for the electromagnetic pulse when the shockwave reaches us." Webb activated the ship-wide communication system. "All crew, this is the captain. In 15 minutes, we will witness the end of the Zephyrian Empire. I know many of you have struggled with what we've done here. I've struggled with it myself. But remember that we didn't start this war. We didn't choose to target civilian populations. We responded to genocide with the only language the Zephyrians seem to understand. Absolute force." He paused, looking around at the faces of his crew on the bridge. "History will judge whether we were heroes or monsters. But history will also record that humanity learned a crucial lesson in these past months. We learned that mercy has limits, that some lines cannot be crossed without consequences, and that when pushed to the brink, humans will do whatever is necessary to protect their own." The final minutes passed in tense silence. Then, suddenly, every sensor on the ship screamed alerts as the Zephyrian star began its death throes. The fusion cascade failure happened almost instantaneously. Nuclear reactions that had maintained perfect balance for eons suddenly spiraled out of control, releasing energy equivalent to the total output of the star's entire lifetime in the span of a few seconds. The star collapsed in on itself, then exploded outward with the force of 10 billion hydrogen bombs detonating simultaneously. The shockwave raced outward at nearly the speed of light, a wall of superheated plasma and radiation that vaporized everything in its path. The 3 Zephyrian worlds disappeared first, their sophisticated civilizations reduced to their component atoms in milliseconds. The vast orbital platforms, those marvels of engineering that had taken millennia to construct, crumbled like sandcastles before a tsunami. Billions of beings who had shared a collective consciousness for their entire evolutionary history experienced individual death for the first time in their species' existence, and then experienced nothing at all. Even at their safe distance, The crew of the Retribution felt the star's death. Electromagnetic radiation washed over their ship, overwhelming their sensors and filling the cosmos with light brighter than 100 suns. The blast would be visible from Earth in 18 years, a new star appearing in humanity's night sky as a permanent reminder of what they had done here. Stellar collapse complete. Doctor, Reeves reported, her voice barely above a whisper. The Zephyrian system no longer exists. I'm detecting only expanding plasma clouds and high-energy radiation. Webb stared at the brilliant point of light that had once been a star system, feeling the weight of 4.7 billion deaths settling on his shoulders. Communications? Any response from the Zephyrian fleet elements outside the system? Lopez checked his instruments and shook his head. Nothing, sir. Without the hive mind connection to their homeworld, the outlying Zephyrian ships seem to have gone completely silent. They might not even be capable of independent thought without the collective consciousness to guide them. Dr. Kim looked up from her xenobiology console, tears streaming down her face. Captain, I'm not detecting any Zephyrian biosignatures anywhere in the sector. They're gone. All of them. The entire species just... The return journey to Earth took 6 months, but the psychological journey would take much longer. The crew of the Retribution carried with them the knowledge that humanity had crossed a threshold from which there could be no return. They had proven themselves capable of extinction-level warfare when sufficiently motivated. Word of the mission's success reached Earth through quantum communications long before the Retribution itself returned home. The reaction was complex and deeply divided. Some hailed the crew as heroes who had avenged the innocents of New Haven. Others condemned them as war criminals who had committed an act of genocide that made humanity no better than their enemies. When the ship finally docked at Luna Station, Admiral Thompson was waiting personally to debrief Captain Webb. The woman who had authorized Project Helios looked as though she had aged a decade in the months since their departure. Was it worth it, Marcus? She asked during their private meeting. Did we do the right thing? Webb considered the question carefully. I don't know if right and wrong apply to what we did, Admiral. We eliminated a threat to human survival, using the most absolute means at our disposal. The Zephyrians learned that humans, when pushed beyond certain limits, are capable of anything. More importantly, the rest of the galaxy learned that lesson too. Admiral Thompson nodded slowly. Our long-range reconnaissance teams are reporting significant changes in how other species interact with human space. The Altarian Republic has opened formal diplomatic channels for the first time. The Vegan Confederacy has withdrawn their territorial claims from 3 disputed systems. It seems that news of the Zephyrian system's destruction is spreading. Are they afraid of us? Webb asked. Yes, Thompson replied without hesitation. They're absolutely terrified, for the first time since humans left Earth. Other species in the galaxy see us as something other than naive newcomers, to be tested and exploited. They see us as a species capable of eliminating entire civilizations when sufficiently provoked. Webb walked to the window of the debriefing room, looking out at the blue marble of Earth hanging in the void. Somewhere down there, children were playing in parks. Artists were creating beauty. Scientists were unlocking the secrets of the universe, all of it protected now by the terrible knowledge of what humanity would do to preserve those simple, precious things. The families on New Haven can rest in peace, he said finally. Their deaths have been answered. In the years that followed, the destruction of the Zephyrian system became known as the Helios event. It marked the end of humanity's innocence and the beginning of its reputation as a species not to be underestimated. Xenobiologists studying the aftermath discovered that the Zephyrian hive mind had indeed understood what was happening in their final hours. Their last communications, decoded years later, contained what could only be described as an apology. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. But perhaps more importantly, humanity had learned to fear itself. The capacity for absolute destruction was a double-edged sword that protected human space while forever changing what it meant to be human. No species that could sterilize an entire star system could ever again claim innocence. But perhaps innocence was a luxury that no civilization could afford in a galaxy where genocide was a tool of diplomacy. The children of New Haven had been avenged, and their deaths had purchased something that no amount of technology or diplomacy could have achieved: respect. In a cosmos where might often determined right, humanity had proven it possessed the ultimate form of might. The question that remained was whether they possessed the wisdom to use it responsibly. The Helios event would be remembered as the day humanity announced to the galaxy that there were lines that could not be crossed, boundaries that could not be violated, and consequences that would follow any species foolish enough to test human resolve through the murder of innocents. It was a lesson written in stellar fire across the cosmos, and it would not soon be forgotten.